when you're able to be in this middle zone, you try to see it from this other perspective. So the enigma of belonging is just sort of understanding that feeling.
This is the Jule Museum podcast. My name is Chris Malinsky, the Janet L. Nolan Director of Curatorial and Educational Affairs here at the museum. Across this academic year, we explore the theme of belonging through American art. This episode features the artist Binh Danh, whose solo exhibition, Binh Danh Advancing American Art, will be on view at the museum all fall. In this episode, we listen to Binh Danh talking with Krystle Stricklin, an assistant curator of photography at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. Krystle and Binh visited the Jule a few weeks ago, and this is an excerpt from their conversation in front of a live audience in our auditorium.
Thank you all for being here tonight with us. And I just want to start by saying thank you to everyone at the Jule for arranging this and for giving us such a warm welcome here in Auburn. I was delighted to be asked to join you in conversation tonight, Ben, firstly because I'm just such a huge admirer of your work. I think as evidenced by our recent acquisition of 8 of your Yosemite daguerreotypes for the Smithsonian American Art Museum's permanent collection, which I'm happy to say we'll have on view next year in our contemporary art galleries. But I also jumped at this opportunity to return to the South. While I do call the Northeast my home now, I actually grew up in the Carolinas, and I went to college and undergrad in the Florida Panhandle at Florida State University, not too far from here. So in many ways, coming back to the South always feels like coming home to me. And I think that this feeling or sense of belonging to a place is obviously something that I'd like to talk about more this evening because it's clearly something that you think about very deeply in your work. But I'd like to begin our chat with a discussion about your unique working methods and the photographic processes you use and experiment with. Can you tell us maybe a little bit more about how you research and learn about these methods, like printing on leaves and silver plates and such?
Well, definitely. So I went to a program when I got my BFA at San Jose State, and we were very encouraged to experiment with different forms of photography. And, when you're studying photography, there's so many paths you can take. You can be, these terms are interesting in the photo community, but you could be a straight photographer, which means you just photograph, print, and then you have your picture. You don't do no manipulation. Or you could play around with what they call alternative processes. So these are like 19th century processes, or maybe they might be breaking these rules. Like, for example, you could paint on your picture, or you can make a construction out of it. So or get off the wall. So these were some of the encouragement from my mentors when I was in the program. And just through those dialogues, I started to play around all these different processes in my work.
Amazing. And I feel like I have to ask more about Louis, your darkroom band. Okay. I think this is such a wonderful nod to, 19th century survey photographers who had to devise their own sort of mobile darkrooms and tents, and they had all this heavy equipment that they had to carry, up and down mountains. Of course, in their case, this was all powered by donkeys and not motor vehicles. Yes. But I wonder if you can describe a little bit more like what a typical day is like in Louis, or how do you prepare for these expeditions, and what are some of the challenges you encounter out in the field?
Yeah, so we modern people are very fortunate. Back in the days of carts and walk-ins, as it's mentioned by Krystle here, you need to get donkey, and it'll take from San Francisco to Yosemite Valley, it'll probably take maybe a few days, maybe a week or so, just to travel that far. But for me, of course, everything's our layout. I can go into Google Map and look at the road condition. I also have to pack up my van. So before heading out to photograph, I'll be making silver plates in my studio. So I have this place ready. And then I pack up the van. I have all my chemistries there. And it's as you can see in the slide, it's just a normal like caravan. There's nothing really special about it. But other than that, it helps me to travel and get out there. And of course, when you enter into the national park, they make it really easy for everyday Americans and visitors, because all I do is find a parking lot and I'm there all day long making a photograph. And it's kind of boring to travel with me if on one of these so-called expeditions, but it's because I'm just there looking at the same scene over and over and trying to get that perfect plate that's going to work for the project. But of course, there's a lot of headaches in photographing that way because, it's a slow form of photography. I'm synthesizing the plate, which takes several minutes. And then, of course, I need to pack my gears, tripod. And of course, if I'm nearby a view that is right close to the parking lot, which is always great because I'm not traveling far, but sometimes I do make these really long hikes, like these like almost half-day hikes, like going up to Upper Yosemite Fall or Nevada Falls, or Mirror Lake. I'm carrying around like 50, I would say about 40 pounds of equipment, and you see hikers out there, of course, going wilderness hiking, and they're carrying a lot more gears than I am too. But people are always perplexed at what I'm carrying. They think I'm carrying a music instrument because I have these large format cameras too. So to make a large picture, like the 12 by 20 inch daguerreotypes in the show here, I need to have a 12 by 20 inch camera that kind of folds out and position out there and make the exposure. So once I'm done making the exposure, I just pack everything up and then I go back to the van. So I work alone, it kind of works better for me not to have it to be responsible for someone else. And then I'm in the van, developing my plates, and all my laboratory equipment's there. At the same time, I'm probably maybe synthesizing another plate because I know that plate might work out, might not. I want to go back and photograph another scene there. And of course, when I'm doing all this, the condition is changing. So that's also the other hard thing is like my exposure is about a minute or 2 minutes. So wind could be a factor. And especially in the national park, you never, even though the condition could be sunny and bright in the morning, in the evening, the winds could definitely pick up. And then, it's just working within that condition. I always have to sort of like pivot and switch. So, but yeah, that sounds like a day in the life of me and Louie.
It's, as you describe it, it's such a labor-intensive process.
Yeah.
So thinking about that compared to how we just press a button on our cell phones to take a photo, there's a wide range there in that. Yeah. Do you have any trips in the way planned for the future?
Oh, for the near future, well, definitely. I mean, I think I also teach, so once the semester cool down a little bit, I actually want to get back to Yosemite Valley. And also, actually, I live in Gilroy, California, which is not far from Pinnacle National Park. And it's a park that's kind of sort of dear to my heart because it's close by, but it's also the park in 2008, Obama made it a national park before leaving office, so to sort of protect that land. So it has this connection to me to the Obama era.
Amazing.
So I'm probably gonna head out there. I also photograph all over the Bay Area, California. Landscape photography is sort of my territory. As an art student, I was very influenced by Robert Franks, and his series called The Americans, where he traveled the United States and making pictures. And that's like the best way to understand this country is just sort of like get on the road and make pictures, and hopefully I could maybe continue to do that as I navigate this landscape.
Amazing. Speaking of landscape photography, I was listening to your episode of the Jule Museum podcast earlier this week, and hearing you speak about your interest in landscapes and how there is perhaps this misperception that landscape photography is very simple and very peaceful, but you say in this episode, but the land is not always peaceful. And so I'm wondering if we can just unpack that statement a little bit. What do you mean when you say the land is not always peaceful?
Yeah. I guess it's a pretty provocative statement to say, but I think every land has history in it in some way, and of course, a lot of history about the land is it's history about our country and what happened there. I mean, today when we go to Yosemite Valley, we don't think of it as a war zone, but it was a war zone back in those days. Same thing as some of the other national parks. So just sort of acknowledging that not everything is there's these stories in the park that, or the landscapes themselves that want to be revealed, and then I feel like my job as an artist is to help to do that through making art. So of course, landscape can be peaceful too, but it's also understanding the full story of a land. I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So returning from it now to this notion of belonging, I'm thinking now of your very beautiful publication, The Enigma of Belonging, with Radius Books, which I have a copy of back on my desk in DC, and I think there's some copies here at the museum's store in the gift shop. But in the text, you speak so beautifully about this complicated notion of belonging and also unbelonging. And so I just wanted to sort of ask, what does belonging mean to you as a Vietnamese American, as a refugee, particularly in today's world? And how do you contend with that as an artist?
Yeah, so I was approached by Radius Press right during COVID to work on a book, and of course I was just thinking about what was going on in the country during that time, of the COVID virus and being an Asian person, and the attack on Asian Americans and Asian people because of the virus. So it was really interesting for me, and just to think about like, what should I make this book about? And so I came up with this title, The Enigma of Belonging, because it's sort of something I feel today, or even when I was growing up, that there's always this feeling of being a foreigner, or being not from this place, and it's a feeling now I'm sort of comfortable with. And it's good to be comfortable with that, It's something I imagine like Robert Frank probably felt that same way when he was working on the Americans, because he was a Swiss immigrant. Is that correct? Yeah. And so he applied for this fellowship, the Guggenheim. So he was seeing America from like a different point of view, And I think when you're able to be in this middle zone, you try to see it from this other perspective. So the enigma of belonging is just sort of understanding that feeling.
Watch a video of the entire conversation between Binh Danh and Krystle Stricklin on the museum's YouTube channel. All museum programs, including this podcast, are made possible by listeners like you. Visit our website at jcsm.auburn.edu to show your support. Thanks.